What's up, fellow Age Groupies? Welcome to another episode of the Age Groupies Podcast. I am Mike Ergo, and along with my co-host Lindsay Hiken, we are here to talk to you about all things related to endurance sports from an amateur athlete perspective. We talk about how to have fun along the way and stop taking ourselves so seriously all the time. You all can follow the show on Instagram at Age Groupies, join the Age Groupies page on Facebook, and look us up by name, Lindsay Hiken and Mike Ergo on Strava. If you have any questions, comments, or topic ideas, hit us up at agegroupies@gmail.com. And if you guys like the show, please leave a rating and review on iTunes. You know how to do it, or wherever you get your podcasts. So today's episode is about how we take care of our mental health. The physical training we invest in is exponentially more effective when we can get our minds right. So, what does it mean to be mentally fit? What does it mean to be race ready? And how do we apply that to everyday life? As you might have guessed, these two things are closely related. Lindsay and I dive deep, so hope you guys enjoy it. Let's get to the show.
We're recording.
Yes, we are. Lindsay, good morning. How are you today?
Not even awake.
Yeah. Yeah, we were both pounding some coffee this morning.
Yeah. I have a really bad allergies and asthma and a whole bunch of BS. And I had some sort of allergic reaction last night to,
Oof.
I have no idea what. And I was itchy all over. So I took 2 Benadryl, which kind of, it helps with the itching, but then it knocks me out at night, which is okay. But then I'm drowsy the next day.
Do you get the rebound effect? Like, I remember like some medications I'll take and they'll help me fall asleep, but then I'll wake up like 4 hours later, similar to like back in my drinking days where I'd be wide awake. Oh, that's good.
Yeah. No, well, no, not so much with this. It's more like I'm going to be a sleepy, worthless human being all day now, but I won't be itchy.
Well, pros and cons, right?
Yeah. I won't be scratching myself like I'm, coming off heroin.
Like you have fleas.
Right.
God, yes.
But I'm also super excited because my pool is open and we're having...
I'm so jealous.
Yes. I mean, we're having some master swimming and then just lap swimming. But even the master swimming, you sign up for a time slot and it's like one person per lane and we're swimming, starting opposite sides. And so you go in advance and on the site, you sign up, then you show up, they do a fever test, like a temperature, and then you get in your line. And so masters is just, the coach will just tell you what the workout is. It's like half hour. And then at 10 minutes before your slot is up, they blow a huge whistle and everybody has to get out of the pool, stay kind of far apart, get, dried off, and then exit out the normal, which is emergency exit normally. So the next wave is coming in.
So that means it's only 20 minutes of swimming then?
No. So the total time slot for getting in the pool and then ending is 45. So you get about 30. I think I got 30 or 35 minutes of swimming last time.
Oh, good.
Because they got me in really fast with it. Yeah. And I just jumped right in.
Thinking about that too, coming back into swimming, really, how much are you going to be able to do off the bat anyways?
Not much. Half an hour was enough. I was like, at the end, he was like, okay, so you're going to do like a 150 up tempo. And I was like, no, I'm not.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm going to
so
do 150
regular,
just freestyle up tempo. And I was like, my up tempo isn't very up.
Yeah.
So
that's the thing. It's like, everything's an up tempo. So what's the difference here? Sprint, like, that's regular speed for me too. Cool.
I was like, I realize you can't tell the difference between my warm up and my up tempo, but I'm really trying.
So we're getting back into swimming.
Mm-hmm. And so I'm going today. That's the other thing I was going to say. I'm going again today. Awesome. I'm so excited. Today's just going to be a lap swim. So I'll probably do the same workout I did on Masters the other day.
That sounds good. Mm-hmm. Well, today, going along with our physical health, we're going to be talking about some mental health and some of the things that
our
we
other
apply.
Favorite topic.
Yeah, our other favorite topic. How to uncrazy ourselves. Yeah,
I don't even know if it's another topic. Like triathlon's part of the unwinding of the neuroses for me.
I think so. Yeah, I really believe that. It's been something where if I can tire out the chatter and the monkey mind, and it helps me be more present when I can remember those states of being present, then I can apply that to regular life outside of the course. So yeah, well, we're going to talk about some things that we've learned along the way through our own mental health practices. And for me personally, that means going to therapy for myself. And that's something that I'm not sure I've ever talked about on the show here, because my job is a therapist. I am a therapist. And so I don't know if people assume I just have no issues or don't need to talk to someone else, but talking to someone else is a big part of my life.
I will say this. I've known a couple people who are getting, and not you, you are not one of these people, but the idea that a therapist wouldn't need therapy. Like I know some people who are getting, PhDs in psychology, and I'm like, they need more therapy than anyone I've ever met.
Yeah, I think it's an accurate generalization, because a lot of people I've noticed, and this is just anecdotally, including myself, get into this field because either we've had help by someone else and it inspired us, but also to understand ourselves. Like, the common question I joke about with other therapists is like, well, we're all trying to figure out why we're so fucked up. And hopefully you can get some of that figured out along the way, preferably before you start helping other human beings.
Well, I feel like you've got it. I will say this. I feel like you've got it on lock. You've done a lot of work on yourself, and it shows.
Oh, well, thank you, Lindsay. Yeah, I've done a metric shit ton of therapy from different people who helped me along the way. And it's been a long journey, sometimes difficult and sometimes fun, but all of it has helped me. So I'm grateful for the people who pointed me to the right way. One thing I will say is that I owe a lot. I owe my career and my mental health to a neighbor of mine who's a Vietnam vet. And I've told this story before to some people and on some podcasts, but I had a Vietnam vet neighbor. I grew up, he was my scoutmaster. He helped Little League coach, helped basketball coach and all that stuff. I played, was friends with his son. He was a Vietnam vet infantry guy, and he saw me when I came back. He's like, hey man, you kind of look like I did when I got back from Nam. Why don't you come to this place called the Vet Center where I talk to people and talk to someone yourself? And, I did it just out of respect for him, and I trusted him. And it turned out it worked. It worked really well for me. So
awesome. And I will just say at the beginning of this little journey here that we're about to go on, you just said a key thing, I think, which is trust.
Yeah.
I'll talk a little bit about my stuff later, but trusting someone to point me in the right direction for mental health help was the key thing, I think, to getting some of my stuff in line too.
Oh, it's got to be. Yeah. I mean, it's all based on trust, unless you're coerced by a court to go talk to somebody. But even then, you're not going to really do the work that you need to do unless you trust that human being, and which means a transfer of trust from the person who referred you. Okay, they trust them, so maybe I will too.
Exactly.
Well, the first thing I want to talk about, and I want to hear your thoughts of it too, is one of the things I've learned from therapy is that we have many thoughts in our head, and the loudest ones seem to be those self-critical ones, the loudest, most prevalent. But when they go unchecked, unchallenged, I think we limit ourselves and default to being controlled by fear. So what I've noticed and what I've learned through my journey in mental health and therapy is that what if I engage that voice with compassion, the one that says, oh, you're fucked up, you can't do this, instead of blocking it out, or instead of just listening to it and say, oh yeah, you're right, I can't do anything right. What if I said, I hear you. Why do you say that? Is there another explanation? And kind of engage with that thought. And then having a mantra ready to speak to it, like who I am is enough, or I can accomplish what I set my mind towards. instead of just always defaulting to that loud, really shitty, critical voice.
Mm-hmm. It is the loudest. I mean, that's my experience too. It's the volume of that voice is so much louder than any positive voice I might have in terms of myself.
Always, right?
And I had someone tell me to try to, you wouldn't talk to another human being that way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I wouldn't be
Never.
like, Mike, you're a piece of shit. You can't do anything. You're a fat slob. You got to, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
I would never say that. So
yeah, we wouldn't make it to a second podcast probably together.
And so why is it okay for me? And so I sometimes try to remember, like, to just, hey, maybe you could talk to yourself the way you talk to someone else.
Yeah. And notice too that there's a lot of voices we have in our heads. Not that you're crazy if you have different voices, but we have different perspectives and different things being said by our brain. Mm-hmm. And so that self-critical one is just one of many. And the ability to listen, the ability to engage something and listen lets us help the other things. Like, yeah, you know what? I think we do have this. I think we will be able to complete this training set. Yeah, this interval is a motherfucker, but I think I'm going to be able to swim it. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Speaking of motherfuckers, let's talk about trauma. Trauma is a motherfucker.
Oh my gosh.
It often shows up in really stressful situations. Mm-hmm. This is the second thing I've learned. And when we get triggered by something, even when it slightly reminds us of a past traumatic event, even when we can't put our finger on why, but part of our brain, our limbic system gets tripped up and we start acting in that fight or flight manner, it causes us to retreat and seek safety, to fall back, because our brain's like, no, this is bad. We need to run away. Mm-hmm. And that can come up even when we're engaging with someone new, just in conversation, trying out a new hobby, maybe getting in the pool for the first time. Mm-hmm. I know I started feeling that. Mm-hmm. And it's a well-meaning preventative mechanism that keeps us stuck. So what I've learned in my journey with mental health is to let myself notice, okay, the body is having a reaction. The mind is giving me thoughts of, we should run, we should get out of here. This won't work. I can't trust this person. And then I have the ability now to say, okay, is that this situation? Or is this some leftover war stuff? Is this leftover is this past residue?
So when you start feeling, the residual effects of trauma coming up in your body physically, so it starts physically for you.
Yeah.
What are some of the feelings that you have, and how do you, like, when you first start noticing? I mean, how does that manifest itself?
So I'll say first, before I started doing this work and learning the vocabulary and understanding what was happening within my body, it was just chaos. I just, like, things would go dark. Not like I blacked out, but I was not able to think and say, like, maybe I should do this, maybe I should do that. It was just chaos. Chaos and fear. Some of the things I noticed were, sweaty palms, sweaty pits, maybe trembling, just this feeling in my gut of turning over, tightening in my chest, tightening in my temples, and the getting angry too, because what happens with trauma is the body doesn't want to feel powerless. And so a lot of people, when you get in a state of fear, it'll immediately try to get back the power of the situation and get angry. And so that can show up like, snapping at someone that's close to you. And, you can notice that in other people's faces, like, whoa, where the hell did that come from?
Yeah.
So.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Mine, I don't know if I've shared on this podcast or not, but I had some so after my divorce from my children's father, I I have shared that I dove into a bottle that was like, ta-da, I did like a swan dive into a giant vat of wine. But there was a lot of self-loathing included in that, just the whole situation. Right. So, especially around the stuff with my kids. So I got what they refer to in AA as a lower companion. Lower companions meaning like someone who's even worse off right now mentally in terms of, you know, like they're drinking or just who they are, just, you know, a mess, right? Like you're a mess, but they're a worse mess. So then you're like, well, I'm not that bad because look at this person. Right.
So relatively you're doing fine.
Mm-hmm. So I was like, let me date this, you know, lower companion so I ended up in a domestic violence situation. You know, I pretty quickly tried to get out of it. And it was this big, long thing. I mean, I had restraining orders and blah, blah, blah. And then I was getting stalked by this person and I wasn't taking care of myself because I was drinking still. So it's like, I had a stalker, but I would like pass out and forget to lock my door, you know, that kind of stuff. Ultimately, this person stabbed me in the chest a couple of times and left me for dead, basically, which obviously they didn't manage to kill me. But after that, I had some PTSD type stuff from being attacked like that.
I'd say you earned that.
It's weird because at the time when it happened, I had been drinking. So I don't have, it's like, I didn't have any conscious, I remember it, but I wasn't like, I was just like, what's happening? Kind of, you know, confused at the time. But after that. And so I had I don't really have any residual effects from it now, I guess. And that may not be true, but I don't, not consciously, but I was going to say the physical, for years after that whole thing happened, because of the stalking situation, because this person would be in a grocery store and when I was there, or be, you know what I mean, for a while, I had this like jumpy physical thing where I like any little, like a noise or any kind of little surprise that would normally not really, you know, be anything would send me into like a really elevated heart rate.
Yeah.
And like, I would either, I feel like I was like a bunny rabbit or like a little ground squirrel when the hawk is circling. Like I'd either freeze and my heart would just be like, bah, 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 or I would just be like trying to roll out of some situation. And it was never anything, you know what I mean? There was never any legitimate reason at that. I mean, obviously the first time there was a legitimate reason for me to want to defend myself, but after that, it was just this like mode of, and meditation helped me with that a lot. I think the breathing and yoga helped me with that in terms of being able to like slow down my breath and therapy and time and, you know, and all of that stuff. I haven't dealt with it so much lately, but I didn't have the sweaty palms like you described, but I definitely had like the elevated heart rate and this just sort of chaotic thinking. There's no thinking. It's instinct.
It's instinct. Yeah. It's a different part of your brain working. And I won't get too deep into the science of what happens, but one thing that makes it easier to understand is that when your body trips that switch of the fight, flight, or freeze, then the blood that is in your prefrontal cortex, the front part of your brain that does all the thinking, planning, math, you know, it drains from that part of the brain. And so you have much more reduced thinking capacity because that blood is needed in your arms and legs. So you can have that superhuman strength to take flight or to fight. So then you're right. There is no thinking, you know, it's sometimes there's a little bit, but it's greatly reduced. And so it's a different kind of being. That's why the vocabulary is so hard to develop, you know, when you're in it, because there's no thinking. There's no thinking. It's just chaos.
I will say that to tie it into triathlon, the very first swim leg of the very first triathlon I did, you know, you started in the water, like a deep water start where you're floating.
Yeah.
And waiting for that gun to go off. And that was the first time I think I'd felt a similar, like just my heart just race, you know,
Yeah.
kind of like where I'm not actually exerting myself physically yet, but my heart rate was, and it was helpful for me to have that experience of like, oh, just because I'm feeling panicked and heart racing doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad situation. Like this is fun and I'm going to do, you know what I mean? At the end of that race, I remember thinking like, oh, that's kind of cool. Cause I was like feeling totally panicked, you know, in the water with these people. I was like, what's going to happen? I'm going to die. But it was great. You know, it was fun.
Yeah. I love that you said that, cause I have a similar experience too. It's like I was retraining my body to be in elevated states, and by like elevated heart rate and learning that, okay, just because my body is in this state does not mean I'm about to die. And maybe it just means I need this for athletic performance. And you're totally retraining your body to learn safety.
Yeah. And you're retraining the mind too, because you're like, hey, there are more reasons than one reason for it to feel like this. And you might want to slow down for a minute and assess the situation instead of just being like, I feel my heart racing. It's time to freaking panic. You know, it's like my brain was like, what? Oh, well, I can assess and see what are we really in a situation that's scary or not? And that's been something that's been helpful in other capacities. When I start feeling freaked out, it's like, well, my brain now has this tool of like, let me actually assess what's happening.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So meditation, you bring that up, has been a huge thing for me too. And I've had a couple epiphanies while meditating. The most powerful one that I had, and I remember it, I was just talking about it to my therapist yesterday, was in 2014. I was training up for this thing called the Go Ruck Heavy Challenge. And it's a 24-hour thing. You're carrying a lot of heavy stuff, carrying, you know, telephone poles with groups of people, doing lots of miserable things, jumping in the ocean, getting cold. But it's based on the Army Special Forces selection. And I was training up for it, and I knew like, okay, I was doing all the training. I was really good shape. I was strong, and I was training up with a couple of civilian friends. And as it got closer to that, I started getting more and more panicked. Like I would have full on paralyzing panic attacks. Oh. And I talked to my friends like, you guys nervous about that? They're like, yeah, kind of, but I could tell they weren't on that same level that I was on. And I was like, what the hell is going on with me? I tried to tell them, I don't know if I'm going to do this. I was trying to back out. And I had this meditation. I was just meditating and just noticing my thoughts. And I don't know how it came to me, but my mind spoke to me and said, this is some leftover war shit right here. And that's the first time I recognized that what I was experiencing was past residue from something else, and it wasn't about the event I was going on. It was enough related because, you know, I'm putting on a backpack. I'm lacing up my boots. I'm going on this mission with a bunch of other people to do this. So my body was like gearing up for combat, and it was remembering past times where I did that, where we got fucked up. Right. So it's totally understandable, but just the knowledge alone that perhaps this reaction isn't due to the situation itself. You know, and then I thought about it. I was like, okay, I'm going to get tired, but we're going to be in San Francisco. Yeah. Nobody's going to be shooting at us. We have, you know, medical staff there to take care of us, and I'm with a bunch of people that, you know, will be able to help me should I need it. And I've been tired before, so I don't need to. That it was just so liberating, and I mean that, liberating. When you finally recognize that, like, maybe it isn't the pool, maybe it isn't this, you know, this triathlon that's caused me this. It's maybe it's some leftover shit from before.
Awesome.
Yeah. So one of my other points that I had that I learned, it was anxiety makes us time travel to an imaginary future, something we don't know, but we just kind of guess. And,
oh my gosh, that's so good.
You know, it's like we're time traveling. We're living in this imaginary future. Like, oh, it's going to turn out so badly. And we're dying 1,000 deaths while we just kind of sit in our rooms here. Then we don't see what's happening in the present. We're totally unaware of what's going on. You know, we don't even get to taste the red vines that we're binge eating, you know? So tying into this, you know, breathing slow and deep, you know, can lower our pulse. So slow, deep exhales and inhales, lowers the pulse, which helps that blood return to the parts of your brain that helps you think. It slows the racing thoughts and helps us notice the present moment. So that present moment, like we know, is where we get to change things and make decisions, where we get to live and where we get to feel our body. So, but it's hard to know that. That's the thing about trauma, and that's the thing about anxiety, is you can't be aware of what you're not aware of. When you're in one of those panic attacks, you're not aware of anything.
Right.
So it takes some practice while you're a bit calmer so you can start applying that when you need it. The same as any kind of training. You start in a low stress environment. This is the same to athletic events. It's same for military training or any kind of training where you're dealing with high stress situations. You start where it's easier and you work your way up so you can employ it when you need it.
Yeah, it's like I was just thinking about that, the idea of training in terms of mental health. We've just talked about meditation, and we both love doing it, but I know so many people who are like, I can't meditate. I can't sit there. And it's like, you don't need to sit for half an hour. I mean, you could sit for 2 minutes, and
yeah, exactly.
You can sit you could just practice sitting for 60 seconds still, or, 120 seconds. And, because it's just a practice. Like, it's not I have to get to the end result the first time I do it type of situation.
Yeah, it's that kind of all or nothing thinking. Like, well, I don't have the monk robes and I don't have a cave to sit in and I can't sit there for 3 hours. So fuck it. I'm not going to even try, But,
right. I'm not in Tibet. So I can't, it's like that.
There's no way I can do it. Well, speaking of which, I just watched a clip of the Dalai Lama. And he was talking to, I think, a guy named Dan Harris, who wrote a book called 10% Happier, about the effects of meditation. But the Dalai Lama was saying, for people starting out, was the question, how can people start out when they're like, I can't do this? He's like, start out for breathing with your eyes closed for 20 seconds, or even with your eyes open. 20 seconds. Anybody can do 20 seconds. Anybody can do 20 seconds. Like my 3-year-old son can probably do 20 seconds. Right.
And if he can do it, any adult can do it.
If he can do it, man, that dude was jumping all over me yesterday, dropping elbows like he was Hulk Hogan, crushing me. So he's a little maniac, and if he can settle his little ass down to do that for a few seconds, then I think the rest of us can too.
Exactly. So in terms of the future tripping type topic, I think that there's a lot of, there's so much content out there about failure being a key component of success in anything. So it could be sports or your work or helping, or improving your mental health or whatever goal you're trying to reach, to understand that failure is one of the key components. And I feel like, at least for me, the projecting into the future is an effort on my part, to avoid failure, to avoid mistakes.
Yeah.
But that's not the way through. You know what I mean? The way through is to do the thing and make the mistakes. And so when it comes to mental health, for me, it was, stop drinking. And so then I stopped drinking, and that's good. But then there's other stuff that's part of that mental illness that need to be addressed. And it's like, you don't have to do it perfectly at the beginning. You just have to try and take baby steps. And, maybe this thing works, maybe this therapist works, or maybe it doesn't. If that therapist doesn't work, try a different therapist. But I think part of our protective, like how we evolved to protect ourselves, is to just be like, if I can't do it right, I'm not going to do it. If this one time doesn't work, I'm not going to try again. Point. And that doesn't, in this day and age, I don't know why we developed that as a instinct, but it's not really that helpful in many circumstances nowadays.
Well, anyone carrying trauma, anyone living with trauma in their body, this makes sense to me is that I don't want to be vulnerable, because if I'm vulnerable and I make a mistake, that's dangerous and I could die. That's that's what part of our brain is telling us. And that's why we can't fail. I think people who don't carry trauma in their body have an easier time failing because it isn't associated with death or near death. You know, so for those of us carrying a little trauma in our bodies, we have to really step back and say, okay, does this match the situation? Can we breathe? Can we slow things down and pick that apart? It's not impossible. It's difficult. It takes some work, but it's, oh my God, it's so worth it when you do it. I think my saving grace out of everything is my enormous capacity to be embarrassed because, you know, had I not, you know, been willing to be embarrassed, I remember I told the story so many times, but walking through the parking lot to my first master swim class, seeing 2 U.S. Olympic license plates and just thinking in my head, fuck, like I can't swim with these people. And they're like, I'm going to be so embarrassed. And then the other part of myself saying, okay, we'll be embarrassed. Won't be the first time.
If any of you have ever seen a picture of Mike in his super short running shorts, like,
yes.
Are they American flag ones?
I have American flag ones. Yeah. I have one that says it's leg day with like some turkey legs on it, and like some
1970s like running short, like short shorts. If you've seen those pictures, you know Mike has a huge capacity to just not really give a fuck.
Exactly. Embarrassment is one of my superpowers.
It's a good one to have. That's a great one to have.
It is. Yeah.
So I think my future tripping is not necessarily related to the trauma that I went through so much. It's more related to, I mean, in a way it is, it's like, it's all interwoven, but it's related to that I have a very loud, negative, judging inner voice. That's partially what led me to be in that abusive relationship, is that voice was so loud. You're a piece of crap. It's like, oh, well, I'll just date this person who's going to make my outsides look like my insides. You know, I'll beat up.
Yep.
But, you know, and this today for me, that the struggle about future tripping is about perfectionism. And that comes from that inner voice of like, not good enough. And so going back to your first point of, you know, maybe talking to myself in a way that is a little bit more empathetic and caring.
Yes.
You know, can help slow down some of the, like, I want to figure out everything, plan it all, and then have it all fall in so that I can avoid ever making a mistake.
Oh, yeah. Well, here's the thing about mistakes and about the unplanned and surprises. They make for the best stories. You know, who's ever read a book or watched a movie where everything just worked out? You haven't, because that's boring.
We wouldn't have a show if it was all good all the time.
Exactly. How are you, Lindsay? Perfect as always. How are you, Mike? Good.
I crushed my Ironman. Every race is a PR.
Every race is a PR. I'm never sad. Everything works out.
I always eat the right foods. I never binge on red vines.
I never binge on red vines. Yeah. One thing, another thing I had that I thought was worth bringing up is going to therapy has helped me to examine the habits and patterns of my life and which habits serve me, which do I want to keep. And here's the thing that is pivotal that I learned in therapy. And it's so obvious once I learn it, but even if I can't see the solution yet, doesn't mean there isn't one. I just haven't found it. You know, it's so often I think I have said, well, I can't change anything because I don't know what the answer is. So I'll just keep doing this. You know, and that was my way of drinking for so long, because I was like, I don't know what else to do. So obviously I can't do anything else.
Right. Right. I absolutely relate to that. It was like the drinking for me is a solution to the pain in my life.
Yeah.
And life is painful. Therefore I must drink wine. Like, you know, and I, on top of my, 12-step practice and doing all of the things we talked about, meditation, I listen to a lot of Buddhist podcasts, and sometimes, I used to go sit at Buddhist Sangha when we were sitting.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
And, there I learned that like suffering is part of the human experience. That's just, it is. It's not It is not tied to your worth, your value, your, any of that. It's just a fact of human life. And we have no control over that. We do have control over our reaction.
Yes.
And when I say we have control over our reaction, we just described a bunch of scenarios where we didn't really have control over our actions because we have trauma, we have PTSD, we have whatever. So in any given situation, I may not have control in that exact moment over my reaction, but what I can control are like doing the things to better myself, like
exactly
meditating, sitting with my Buddhist, Sangha, realizing like, oh, hey, my first thought or what I think may not be the full picture of the reality of the situation. Therefore, the fact that I can't see a solution doesn't mean there isn't one. The fact that I have a feeling doesn't mean that that feeling is a fact.
Right.
It might just be a feeling that my brain has conjured up out of nothing. And Buddha talks a lot about the brain just manufacturing thoughts.
Right.
And we want to assign an origin, a reason, a something to every single thought that comes up in our brain. And the truth is, the bulk of them are literally just manufactured by our own mind.
Yeah.
So, to go around the world interacting with people from a perspective of like all of the thoughts that you have being some, partially true and relevant and is doesn't really serve us. I mean, that's our default, but it doesn't really serve us.
Well, because I think the greatest human fear is the unknown, and our brain wants to put things into a category. Even if that category doesn't make sense, it's for a lot of people, it's better than being unknown.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
yeah,
that's you make an excellent point there. That it's so. What I remember hearing, and this is probably a paraphrasing of the Buddha, but there is the unavoidable human experience of suffering, which is being born, getting sick or injured, and dying, growing old and dying. And then there's the optional suffering of wishing it wasn't so. Like, why does it have to be this way, or why can't it be different? And that's that future tripping. That is that rehashing that we do that really keeps our suffering going or adds to it exponentially.
Mm-hmm. And on a more subtle level, it can even just be a grasping of the pleasurable, of that which we perceive as pleasurable, and an aversion to that which we perceive as being not pleasurable. And we do that all, like we're in a constant state of that, doing that. It's like the human, we want to categorize things. And partially there's a reason for that. So we can kind of like understand the world around us. Like we can't.
Yeah.
But the flip side of that is that because we're judging and categorizing everything, then we're like, oh, this is good. I like this. I don't like this. I don't want that. I want that. You know what I mean? And it's like a constant running, and it can lead us down some paths that are very unhealthy. Like you can get pretty far down the path of pursuing something you want, and to the detriment of other things in your life. We hear all the time in triathlon, people like training and then their whole their family's like, what the fuck? Like, do we even do we even matter? You know what I mean? And
exactly.
It's just that natural, but that part of the suffering, that's the optional thing, right? Like we can't avoid birth, sickness, and death, but we can avoid, or not even avoid, but we can do things that let us like be a little bit more neutral when it comes to grasping pleasure and pushing away anything we perceive as non-pleasure.
Well, the other thing too that I like that you brought up is that those of us carrying trauma in our bodies, we might not have as much control in the moment when we get triggered. But we can do the things, the preventative maintenance. We can do the breathing. We can speak with someone. We can take care of our bodies by exercising and trying to get good sleep, eating well. We can do these things that make it less likely that we'll have as big reactions as we do. And even when we do have those reactions, the more we practice things like breathing when we're calm, the more likely we'll be able to access that in a stressful state, just like any kind of training. Because it has to be muscle memory. That's what military training was. When bullets start flying, and this is of course a dramatic example, there's no time to say, shall I first get cover and then turn around and return fire? Or perhaps shall I pull out a grenade? Let me think about this. What would be more No, that shit doesn't happen. It has to be muscle memory of practicing over and over and over. And the same way military vets have practiced and trained, the same way triathletes have trained for a race by doing different drills, by practicing running, swimming, biking.
Do you guys have, I just wonder, I obviously don't know anything about the military, but do you guys have so the muscle memory that's required for combat, I understand the need for that because you're right. Like you can't sit there and ponder anything in this. Like you've got to know what to do.
Hey guys, are we shooting back? What are we?
It's not like the movies. I mean, some, old school, like military movies where there's like some guy who's just like completely clueless. That guy's dead in real life, because he didn't get it together. Right. But that extreme example, it's extreme in one way, but there's a lot of people who are in the military. This affects a lot of people. Do you have deprogramming? Because that wouldn't really necessarily serve you that well, in a grocery store in Santa Rosa, if you're in the Whole Foods or something and you have an instinct.
Nope. Triathlon is my deprogramming. You're looking at it. Triathlon and podcasting and talking to people like you, because you're right. There's no civilian boot camp of how to be a civilian again.
It's almost like that's what they need to develop. It's like, okay, we're going to start with 6 weeks. We're going to end with 6 weeks of showing you how to at least not hair trigger react when nothing's going down.
Exactly. At least a cultural competency class of how to be a civilian again. Like, for example, when I'm meeting someone new, instead of saying, "What's up, motherfucker?" being like, "Hi, my name is Mike. How are you?" Because that doesn't translate as well.
When you take your son to the mommy and me play date, you don't need to roll in like that.
Dropping all heavy guns blazing.
Yeah. Maybe there's your new career. You're like, actually, that's kind of what you're doing, right? You're like the consultant for how to live after.
Yeah, exactly. Replaying things like, how did that go? How else could we do that? But, that would be great. I've seen some great memes, and I've seen that applied to even office life. Where you see the instead of saying, "What the fuck?" say, "I see your point. Perhaps we could discuss this, though." Or instead of saying that, "Don't you remember, you dumb fuck?" you say, "Per my last email."
Exactly. I will say that I've had those thoughts. I wasn't in the military, but I've definitely been like, "What the fuck, you dumbass," about coworkers. That doesn't require military training. That just requires interactions with the general public.
Interactions with humans. I can't imagine how many times people have had those thoughts with me. I remember I've got some great "what the fuck" kind of faces pointing towards me, and I think the one that sticks out the most, and there's been so many, was I was taking oceanography in community college, and we were titrating solutions, and I think I had too much of an acid or something that I was dropping into a solution of salt water or something, and so I poured all of that back into this jar of just this pure acid, and I totally contaminated the whole thing, so it was useless. And I just got this look, and as I was doing it, I was like, "Oh, I shouldn't be doing this. I can't stop."
People are staring at me.
The look of the guy in charge of the lab just looked at me with a mixture of amazement, befuddlement, exasperation, and just looked at me like, "What the fuck?" And all I could do was shrug and be like, "Yeah, man. Yeah."
I've had several instances where I'll say something that I think is hilarious and I will like be in tears laughing and people are just staring at me and I'm like, okay, guess that was just
that one was funny. Just for me, I guess.
I'll get it together here. I'll be crying laughing and they're just like, I don't.
Yeah. So what do you think are some good action items for our listeners? I mean, the ones I thought about were develop a breathing practice, and it doesn't have to be anything crazy. No robes, no Buddhist chanting, no gongs involved necessarily.
Unless you want it.
Unless you want it, then go for it. I've done some silent retreats. I loved it. But so develop a breathing practice. If you're wondering about the advantages of talking to a mental health professional, I'd say try it out. Because just like we get a checkup from a doctor for our physical health, just getting a checkup for our mental health is important.
I love the therapy because you can literally just say whatever's actually on your mind.
Yeah.
And get some feedback without getting the what the fuck face, you know?
Yes.
And my experience has been I've had to go to several different ones here and there to find the one that I really like. And then I like that, you know, when I find the one that I click with, it's like I can just say whatever is going down.
Yeah, there's no stakes.
Non-judgmental. It's really amazing to have that sounding board.
It is. And here's the advantage. What I love about it is when I talk to my therapist, there's no other relationship. Like when I talk to my wife or I talk to my friends, our relationship is at stake. So you know, I need to, in some ways, filter what I'm saying to be mindful of that person's feeling. This is a neutral observer, someone who's not involved in a different relationship. They're just here to hear us. And so it's so much easier to speak freely.
Yeah, there's not this perspective of all of the past interactions that we've had, you know, as a glaze over both of our interactions. Like, you know, with my partner, with Josh, it's like we've got a decade of pushing each other's buttons. So there's going to be that history brought into our conversations. Whereas the therapist, there's none of that. It's just like neutral, which is great. What about, so meditation's a good one.
Yep.
And my recommendation is if you really like haven't ever meditated or you don't think you can, or you're just not sure or whatever, go download either Headspace app or Calm.
Yeah, I do Calm.
I used to use
that.
Headspace. I love Headspace, but I switched to Calm because they've got some other like sleep things and some other stuff on there that I really liked. And then,
you can have Matthew McConaughey read you a bedtime story.
Yeah. And I can meditate. I can sit for 20 minutes, half hour without anything and just do it because I've been doing it for a long time now. But I love Calm for some guided meditations. They have a little beginner series if you have no idea what it is. And then I also like the Insight Meditation Center in Redwood City is where I like to go sit. It's Buddhist, so it's a little different. So Calm is definitely secular. There's nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, but there's a podcast called audiodharma.org, and that's just, if you look up Audio Dharma, that's the Insight Meditation Center where I sit. That's their podcast. And they've got a bunch of just like guided meditations, and they have a little beginner series too. Like, what is mindful meditation? And they're not really focusing on the Buddha thing, although they will talk about it obviously in the Dharma talks, but like on the, what is mindful meditation, like beginning guided, it's just like helping you connect with your breath and sit there, and it's giving you some pointers. So yeah.
I love the Insight Meditation Center. That's the retreat center I went to in
Oh,
Scotts
you did?
Valley. Yep. So, wow, Lindsay, we got another thing in common.
Oh my gosh. I love it there. I actually managed to go to Silent Retreat and shut my trap too, which is pretty freaking amazing.
Oh, I loved it. My favorite. So I had a lot of great moments there, but my favorite is we were doing a 5-day silent retreat, and I was so excited for this because I was like, finally, no one's going to talk to me. And so we all say our little piece, why we're here, this one sentence introduction, and then they bang a gong to start this thing. And then it's silent. Everyone's just kind of like looking around, and it's silent. And this one lady goes up to the leader and goes, "Did we start the no talking part yet?" And he just kind of nods like, "Yup."
Oh my
It was
gosh.
so good. Yeah, I loved her because I was wondering the same thing. I was just too chicken to ask. A third thing I'll recommend people trying out And this is something anyone can do. It doesn't involve meditation, and it doesn't even involve getting a therapist, is walking and talking. So if you have a friend you can walk and talk with, or if you have a friend you can call while you're walking, I'll save people the explanation of why it works, but it helps rewire the brain in a very helpful way to be moving and talking about things that are important to you. You know, having those deep talks. I mean, one simple question to see if this is effective or not. Have you ever gone on a walk and came back worse than when you left?
Nope.
Nope, not ever. So
Josh and I were on a walk around the dish at Stanford Dish. It's like a three, a little over three. You know that much. So we started out a walk by arguing. This is how we start our walk. And so we're going around. We're kind of bickering with each other. We're both in a crabby mood, walking. And then we just start walking in silence. We're just walking in silence. I'm like, this motherfucker, I can't, you know, I mean, I have no idea what the fight was even about. Nothing really. And so we get all the way to kind of the top of the loop and we're walking along and I'm getting ready to just, like 2 steps ahead of him. I'm getting ready to like turn and just tell him what if, light him up. And right then there was this little ground squirrel popped out of the ground right near us. And this hawk flies down and just starts squeezing this thing to death right in front of us. And its little eyes were, and both of us looked at it and we looked at each other. We're like, oh my God. And it was just the most I immediately forgot why I was mad. So did he. And we both were just like, let's say a little kind word and a prayer for the squirrely who just got killed in front of us. And that was it. We finished the walk, chit-chatting. We were all good we didn't even remember why we were fighting.
So that's the second reason to go on a walk with someone who's important to you, because you might see, you know, a rodent get murdered by a hawk. And that is a special experience, and it brings people together.
Saying, when you're walking and talking, the universe will provide whatever you need, including if you're about to just light up your relationship for no reason because you're being a douchebag, which is what I was going to do. The universe was like, here's a message. I'm going to squeeze a squirrel to death in front of you.
Yeah, exactly. I like that. That is really cool. And so you owe your relationship to that hawk in the universe. That's cool.
Yeah, it's like, oh wait, there's more important shit than whatever the little petty thing is that I was upset about. Like things die, right? Like, you know what I mean? So let me get back on the beam. Yeah. Walking and talking, meditating, therapist, getting good, consistent, good sleep. Not just for training, but for mental health, it's key, I think.
Yeah. My week's been going better now that I've been getting a little better sleep. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it started out rough because I went fishing, so I was up super early, and then of course that was the night that my son didn't want to go to sleep at all.
Of course.
So it was a rough day, but sleep makes all the difference. I mean, the little tricks I've tried when I can't sleep and get up, I'll get up and do a little stretching and then go back to sleep. Maybe I'll listen to the Calm app. But yeah, sleep cannot be overstated how important that is. So I think that's a good list for our listeners.
Yeah, it's great. I think we did it. Awesome. I sort of woke up by the time we got to the end of this thing too.
Yeah.
Yay.
That's cool.
Okay. So, are you doing any, just to quickly talk about triathlon and sports and stuff, do you have anything you're doing right now? Like, what are you doing?
On July 25th, I will be doing Pandemic Man, which is a self-supported half Ironman, which will be happening on the day that Ironman Santa Rosa was supposed to happen. So we're going to do pretty much the course. We're going to swim Lake Sonoma. We're going to do the Ironman 70.3 bike route. Okay. And then we're going to run pretty much the course because my friend Eric, who did COVID Man with me, lives right by the course.
Awesome.
Yeah. So that's going to be fun. And then I have the actual Ironman 70.3 Santa Rosa coming up in October 17th.
Nice.
And that Ukiah Triathlon is scheduled to happen in September 13th. So I got a few races on for 2020. So it's been fun to be creative. Like I realized I really like these self-supported ones too, because it turned out to be more of like a group run and group ride.
Yeah. Super fun.
Yeah.
Friend Brenna, who was registered for Santa Rosa Full, is going up. It might actually be that same weekend. I'll have to check what weekend it is. It might be the same weekend.
Yeah, we'll be on the course at the same time then.
That would be amazing. I'll tell her. But yeah, she's going to go up and do the full self-supported.
That is cool. So that means we'll all be out there in the same time.
I think so. I've got to check with her the date. It might be the weekend after, which would be kind of a bummer, but let me see the date, because that would be amazing. Because I want to go up and support her, and I could support you both at the same time. That would be awesome.
Yes.
I'm not doing either distance, but I could swim a little bit and ride, and then
Exactly. Ring a
chill
cowbell.
out while you guys. Yeah. I could swim with you, ride with you, but on the run, my body's like over it right now. So
yeah, just say no to running right now.
so annoying. But so I'm doing a bunch of in-team challenges with Team Shaper, because Tim is, recognized that a lot of us don't have races happening. Mm-hmm. So we always have in-team challenges anyway, but he's made a whole schedule. So tomorrow I'm doing what we're calling Hillapalooza on the bike. It's all these local climbs in the peninsula. He's given them different points, and we have 8 hours. I'm not going to be riding for 8 hours, but you have up to 8 hours to get as many points as you can. You can do whatever route you want.
Oh, that's awesome. Mm-hmm. That sounds really cool. I like that. So it's kind of a choose your own adventure.
Uh-huh. So I've got some girls that we're going to ride together, and we're actually starting from Half Moon Bay. I mean, the team is starting from Menlo Park, but I got permission to just start from home because 3 of the climbs are on this side, are right near where I live. And so I'm going to start with those and then drop over to the peninsula and then climb around there and then come back home.
That's awesome. That is so cool.
Yeah. So we've got that, and we've got some swim run. We're swimming in the lagoon in Robot City, and he's just doing a bunch of different challenges, and where you can push yourself, or you could just do it for fun or whatever. And so I'm happy with that for right now. Yeah.
Well, let's put it out to our audience too, our listeners. What do you guys want to hear us talk about? What specifically do you want to hear on this show? So I put it out on our Facebook page, and I put it out on Instagram. So you could just hit us up in the comments, or you can DM us and let us know, or email us agegroupies@gmail.com. Mm-hmm. And we want to hear from you guys. So we, Lindsay and I, both want to thank you, all of you, for listening. It means a lot that you guys would listen and to us banter and talk back and forth here and support us. So thank you so much.
Thanks, guys. Have a great week.
All right, everyone. Take care.
Alrighty, that concludes today's episode of the Age Groupies Podcast with me, Lindsay Hiken, and my co-host, Mike Ergo. We really hope you enjoyed it. You can follow the show on Instagram at Age Groupies, join our Age Groupies page on Facebook, and look us up by name, Lindsay Hiken and Mike Ergo on Strava. If you have questions, comments, or topic ideas, feel free to email us at agegroupies@gmail.com. If you enjoy the show, please leave a rating and review on iTunes or wherever you get your podcast, as this really helps us get more exposure while we try to grow this little venture. And of course, if you have friends you think might like the show, please be sure to share it with them. But for now, thanks for listening, and we will talk to you next week.